All right. Welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. Man, was this episode 43?
Mm-hmm.
43. Felt like they said, keep me on my toes. Um, yes, this has been a journey, yet again, I say this mostly all of my podcasters, but thank you guys that have been supporting, following the podcast and following the work that I do with advocacy. Without you guys' support and without you guys' guidance and advice from time to time, I wouldn't be able to do what I do and have this platform. So thank you. Also want to say thank you to all the guests who have been on here thus far. Coming to the end of season one. Um, and it's bittersweet. I'm gonna be taking a little bit of a break. I'm still gonna be doing things towards the podcast, but I'm gonna be taking a break from like releasing episodes. I'm trying to do some things publicly as COVID starts to dial down. Try to do some more outreach and awareness and education. In live broadcasts and hopefully do some live Q&As and what have you. But we had me and the guests today had a lot of conversations, and I guess I should probably have you introduce yourself and then do a recap because people might not know who I'm talking about. So I'm gonna have you introduce yourself and then
Yes, sure. Super excited to be back for part two. I'm Brina Williams. I am the project assistant for FSM as well as an intern there, senior at Western Michigan University, and I have experience in foster care.
thank you, welcome back. It's great to
Yes,
have you.
great to
um
be back.
yeah, we had a very in-depth conversation about your story and your experience and your journey through mental health. you know um and I just want to say, listening back to that episode, I truly appreciate your vulnerability because going to a place where a lot of people are afraid to talk about or afraid to acknowledge they have been through. I hope that that episode helps other people start those conversations and open up to their supports to be able to allow them to be able to allow the supports to actually support them throughout their journey, because um, hopefully a lot of people don't get mad at me, but we as human beings have a habit of wanting support, wanting people in our lives to have our back, and we even do it as the individual, but we draw boundary lines and guidelines, and some of them are needed, but we draw lines and, we tell half truths. So when things happen, when it's the after effects of things happening, we wonder, why did I have to go through that by myself, and why, did I have my supports, But a lot of times, and I'm not saying this is everybody, a lot of times we are afraid to open up completely to the people that have our back, to our friends, to our family, to our circles, and all of us have, troubles with our trust, and in this day and age in society, it's warranted,
Yeah,
but
being
I hope that some people who may listen to that conversation, that we had in part one, and then evokes conversations and challenge people to have those conversations with their family, with their friends, with their circle, and to really get in deep with support and how to help somebody and how to be there for somebody. And sometimes you just have to listen to not respond, you know, but to listen actively, to hear the person. So without further ado, that's a little bit of a recap of our last episode. So if you haven't listened to it, and you're listening to this, go back to last
go back.
episode and listen to that. It was very inspiring, and it was just an all-out great episode. This episode, we're going to be talking about a couple of different things, Brina's education experience, advocacy, and her work with FSM, and we're going to build a timeline for you guys to, see her experience and journey in each one of those avenues. So without further ado, let's take this journey, let's dive deep.
All right.
How was education for you throughout your experience in care in the transitions and reunification leading up to college?
So a lot of youth in care experience having to switch schools and move schools around, and that's often very, abrupt, and it impacts them, greatly. I mean, that's not even just a transition of school and perhaps faculty you're connected with, or just a school you're comfortable with, but uprooting of friends and familiarity. Um, but the one thing that I really advocated for myself during my time in care was that I wanted to stay at the same school. Um, During the abuse, we made the transition, the move from Eaton Rapids to back to Lansing, and I started attending Waverly High School. And I just really dug in there. School ended up becoming an outlet for me, especially with all the abuse going on, because it felt like at home, I had to make myself as small as I could and to just take up as little space as I could and be so unnoticeable and invisible, to avoid, the abuse and the effects and everything. But at school gave me the opportunity to flourish. I think I talked a little bit in the last episode about that's kind of finally when I made some like real true friends that I still have to this day. And so that kind of helped get me out of my shell. I was really connected with the faculty there. Again, as I mentioned in the last podcast, it was my freshman year English teacher that I ended up speaking to about the abuse going on at home, and who reported and ultimately got me taken away. So I made some really, really deep connections while at Waverly. I joined color guard and part of the marching band. And so school really became a positive outlet for me. And I kind of ended up excelling. I was always much, much harder on myself than, my biological mom or any of the foster families I lived with, much, much harder on myself about getting good grades than any adult in my life. Because I don't know, I just, you know, entering high school, and especially during this time too, was about the time I started getting connected with Michigan Youth Opportunities Initiative, and these conversations of college started happening. And to go to college, I was under the impression like you needed good grades, and so I wanted to be successful, or what this idea of success I had in my mind, and from the discussions I was a part of and I was having with other people. And so to do that, needed to focus on grades. And so yeah, school became an outlet for me. There were other faculty members that I kind of latched onto throughout high school, that kind of became consistent, especially throughout my time in care, like while home life was being moved around too. Like as long as school was the same, or I could expect it. I got really close with my French teacher throughout my time in high school, and then also my junior year English teacher, him and his wife kind of were starting the process of exploring options of wanting to foster and maybe adopt and everything. And so there was actually towards the end of junior year, every day after school, waiting for my mom to pick me up, because school ended at like 2:40 and she got out of work at 3 or whatever. This was like after being reunified, but towards the end of high school. I would stay after, and we just started from the very beginning of my story, kind of where I started with you, kind of like about that experience initially as a baby, like throughout childhood, having been like an only child and being lonely and struggling with mental health, and then the abuse, and having gone through foster care and everything, and just kind of just shared my life experience, and then focusing on my experience having been in foster care or whatever. And actually him and his wife did end up becoming foster parents and fostered a little girl. I obviously can't share too much, but I can't even remember if they're ending up adopting or not. But and so that was kind of like, he a little bit, I mean, I don't want to get too cocky and take on so much of that, but I'd like to think a little bit of that was like being vulnerable, which is hard. Like you were saying, being vulnerable is super hard. But being vulnerable with him and kind of sharing that experience, that hopefully, fingers crossed, led him and his wife to kind of doing that. But I got just super, super connected. School has always just been like a positive outlet for me because I had nowhere else to put my energy. And I was kind of getting all the things that I was missing because of the abuse at home, at school, like positive reinforcement and recognition and all. Like, I mean, not even to go as far as to say being like nurtured by some of these like teachers that I had these deep connections with.
Awesome. You spoke about a couple of things, but one thing that really stuck out to me is throughout your experience and things that were happening outside of school, you made sure to make your education or school to be the one place that was safe and stable and constant. And you hid into that, rightfully so. And it's like, if anything, I'm gonna make sure this is it,
Yes. Yeah.
And I, some of you guys that may have not listened to the other one, you spoke about your experience with, bullying that to a certain extent, and I know that's a very heavy subject for most people, going to school. School is a very trying place,
Yes.
know.
Yes.
Everyone I'm sure has a relatable experience of, whether school was for me or it was a refuge, it either wasn't for me or it was a refuge, or I just, floated through. Everyone has their narrative, but I love that you spoke to it as well. This is my place, and
Yeah.
I made connections, I made a point to join things, to be a part of, and just continued forward with that.
Yeah.
Uh,
My experience at Waverly was vastly different than like being at Elmhurst. That's where I went to elementary school, and that's where most of like the bullying and stuff took place. Just and then even transitioning to, there was a period in between there that I went to Eaton Rapids Middle School, and each was vastly different, each experience. But Waverly was, I don't know, I had a really good group of people around me and felt supported by staff. And you're right, it was a refuge. I mean, that was kind of like, that experience is ultimately like what got me out of the abuse. And so it felt very safe.
That's awesome. So help me transition
Yes, to college.
Build me a timeline and the steps that you had to take as a foster care alumni, and I don't know, were you reunified back at that point, or
Yes.
what did that look like?
Yep. So from freshman year and being placed into care a month before my 15th birthday, I spent a year and a half in care in total after that. So the following summer, I was reunified with my mom. And so, yes, transitioned to college. I was at home and everything for that. But we got to start back. So it was my last foster home that encouraged me to initially get involved with Michigan Youth Opportunities Initiative. They pushed me to go to the Michigan Teen Conference that was being had that year. I went to the financial literacy training or whatever, and that was kind of actually it for about a year before I actually kind of came back and started being active again. And at the time I was part of the Clinton-Eaton County, and I don't know, had a good time. I went to a cooking class and ended up actually kind of slicing a couple of my fingers open, trying to cut a parsnip, which kind of scared me away, not gonna lie. And then just dealing with over that summer, kind of the transition of going back home and being reunified, and kind of, I know I spoke a little bit last time about kind of like the apprehension of being reunified. What has actually changed, what's actually gotten better kind of feelings. And so dealing with that and navigating like the relationship of, living with my mom again and living with family again. So it wasn't until actually like later that year, maybe in the fall, or maybe even like the beginning of the next year, that I kind of got back involved with MYY. And by then, because I was reunified, the MYY coordinator for Clinton was on maternity leave because she was actually pregnant at the Michigan Teen Conference, so she was still on maternity leave. So everyone who was a part of the Clinton County was actually hanging out and doing stuff with Ingham. And when the coordinator for Clinton came back, I was kind of presented with, hey, which county do you want to kind of stick with and roll with? Because for for those listeners that do not know, which I'm going to take a guess it's the majority, NYY is kind of, it's for youth between the ages of 14 and 23. So I was still able to participate, like that was if you had an open case or even if you were returned home or whatever. So I was still like wanting to participate and all that jazz. And so because now that I had been reunified, I was in Ingham County, I had to kind of make this decision. And I had really bonded with the Ingham County coordinator during that time, Megan. Although I would miss, the Clinton Eaton coordinator, Christine. I had bonded with both of them a lot during just hanging out with them and being, going to MYY events and all that jazz. But it was at a MYY Ingham County, because that's ultimately where I ended up choosing to stay. It was at a MYY community partners meeting, which we had monthly, that I met Kelly. And Kelly was the director of a program called the High School Diploma Completion Initiative, or HSDCI, at LCC, which was similar to early college, which I think most people are familiar with early college as kind of like what people or some people are doing in high school. It's kind of thrown around like if you're a part of that group, then like but I had never heard of HSDCI before that community partner meeting. And she basically just gave me the lowdown. It was a program that was, again, similar to the early college, where like you're able to take whatever classes you needed to satisfy your requirements for graduating at your high school, but then you could take general pop classes, like just free college classes essentially, and they paid for everything. They paid for your tuition, they paid for books, they paid for any other supplies, because I did take an art class while I was a part of the program. So they bought all my art supplies. They paid for bus passes or gas cards, depending on if you drove, or like I took CATA. So they gave me like monthly bus passes. They gave you food cards, so you're able to eat at the cafeteria while you were there. They basically provided everything you needed. And so I was super, super interested, and I brought this up to my high school counselor, who initially was under the impression that it was a program for like students who were behind or missing credits, which I was not one of those students. So she was really apprehensive about me joining. But I kind of spoke with some of those faculty members that I was really connected with, like my French teacher and both English teachers and stuff. And they were very supportive and encouraging of like you have to do this, like this is free college, like why wouldn't you do this? And so I ended up taking that jump. That was a long year. That was the same year my uncle passed away and my dad got out of prison, and kind of everything I spoke about with that going down in the last podcast. But so that it was that fall of my senior year that I started attending LCC, and being a student at like Waverly and at LCC, I was kind of able to, I was still doing color guard and stuff, and I'm being able to do all that, but I was taking classes only at LCC. I took no classes at my high school. And then being there at, like, of course, Kelly, because we met through MYY, like knew I was in foster care and had that experience. So they got me connected to their on-campus based support program, Fostering Stars. And I got my first coach. And so those were services I utilized side by side with that. It was really Fostering Stars that got me, helped me like fill out FAFSA every October 1st. I met with my coach weekly. And so while LCC doesn't necessarily use the 7 life domains model, that's kind of typical for coaching services and on-campus based support programs. We did touch on those. Like, I mean, it was basically, I don't want to be like, oh, it's a therapy session, because like, what's the difference between a therapist and a coach? But just being able to go and talk to them when just filling out various other scholarships like Fostering Futures and helping me figure out TIP and all of that. And then through that program, getting to know Fostering Stars and getting to know my coach at the same time, it kind of made the transition from graduating high school and graduating the HSCCI program easier, because I then did stay another year at LCC as, I guess you could say, a general pop student, and finished out, and I graduated with a associate's degree in general studies after about another year. But then by then of course, I was familiar with Fostering Stars and had this connection with my coach, which made that transition a lot easier because things that the HSDCI program did for me, then Fostering Stars was able to do. So during that last year at LCC, I made the transition from like riding CATA to then having my own vehicle. And they provided bus passes when I needed them, and they were able to provide like gas cards and stuff. And then they were still like filling out or helping me fill out scholarships and getting all of that taken care of when it came time that, I needed to apply to four-year universities because I had ambitions to do that. They helped me work on the application and get all of that squared away and figured out because, having experience in foster care, being a first generation college student, I had no clue what I was doing. Absolutely not, I had no idea. And so they made that like very, very seamless almost, and easy, and helped me figure out classes when I needed to register for that first semester. And it was bittersweet to be graduating because I had made such a connection, and was very apprehensive actually about kind of transitioning schools because, I was transferring to Western Michigan University. That's kind of the school that I had always had my sights on, I kind of had aspirations to get connected to the CETA Scholars Program because that's like the golden standard of campus-based support programs, right? So, and not gonna lie, that scholarship they provide was very, like, I had aspirations to graduate with no debt. So it's very appealing, but I was apprehensive, like, hey, I'm gonna have to join a new campus-based support program. I'm gonna have to get a new coach. And historically, I struggle with transitions. I don't know if that's a theme now, but I do. And yeah, I ended up transitioning from LCC after graduation that fall to Western Michigan University, where I've been going. That was during the height of the pandemic, so 2020, when everything was still completely virtual, and have been there for the past couple of years. Not this spring because the semester is just ending, but this summer I am graduating with my bachelor's degree in social work. And yeah, the campus-based support program, I was super apprehensive, like I mentioned, but has ended up being a really awesome transition. I'm really connected to the coach that I have at Western too, and they provide a lot of the similar experiences. I'd say the biggest difference between programs is that the CETA Scholars Program requires you to live on campus. Of course, LCC didn't have any sort of dorms for on-campus living, so that couldn't have been a requirement. But the CETA program does require you to live on campus, and a lot of that, is because youth with experience in foster care struggle with housing stability and whatnot. And so, but they aid out with transportation and tuition, and we focus on the 7 life domains. They use that model a little bit more in depth at CETA, but still kind of touching on all the same parts. I know me and my coach here at Western have had that conversation, like, what is the difference between a therapist and a coach? Because of course I've had a therapist for 6 years too. And they're quite similar, but it's like coaches on campus-based support programs are offering youth who don't have that support system and don't have family support kind of the same, what they would get if they did have that support. So it's like very, very nurturing, I'd say, very like, I'm gonna miss it, especially this summer when I start my grad program and technically won't be a part of the program anymore. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I have a couple follow-up questions because, although I know, I don't know if the audience may know. What is MYOY? What does it stand for, and what is it about?
Yeah, so MYOY, like I mentioned, what is Michigan Youth Opportunities Initiative. And so typically each county kind of has a coordinator designated from MDHHS. Sometimes they wear multiple hats, like if they're a caseworker and a coordinator, it just depends. But it's a program for youth with experience in foster care, either with an open case, have been reunified, doing independent living, ages between 14 and 23. And it's basically kind of like, the best way to describe it is like a life skills program. It kind of you learn, like they have training sessions where you learn. So I mentioned cooking class. That's what initially scared me away. So we've done cooking classes. We attend, various webinars, strategic sharing. That's a big one. I'm sure that language is super familiar because we can't escape it. So learning how to share your story. And then there's like lots and lots of advocacy opportunities. And MIY, I would attribute, like, I know that's something that we want to get to. I'd attribute MIY to kind of like the start of my professional advocacy career. I know at this point I've mentioned advocating for myself during my time in care a couple times, just like with mental health, wanting to stay at the same school, but definitely getting involved with organizations that are outside me and that are much bigger than me. Started with MIY.
Thank you, thank you. And the other question that I had
Mhm.
was, what is a campus-based support? Like, what is that? Like,
Yes,
where do I go to get
sure.
that? Like, what, I
Yes.
don't know.
So this is in a lot at the work that we do at FSM. So FSM is Fostering Success Michigan. And basically FSM is focused on college access and support for youth with experience in foster care. And so under FSM, there is a network of 30 campuses across Michigan that have
Mhm.
an on-campus based support program. And so what these programs do is they offer kind of holistic support for youth with experience in foster care who are attending college, at their campus. And that looks different for each campus. But it's, there's typically some sort of scholarship that you get for being a part of it. You typically get a coach that you then like meet with regularly, and again focusing on those 7 life domains, and it's all centered around education, but it encompasses things like mental and physical health, or relationships and connections, transportation, and all kind of like everything. I think oftentimes, especially like it just has a holistic approach to allowing these youth with this experience to succeed. um I mean, it's just, I know that's like the Cliff Notes version, but because
But
there's so much
that's great.
more.
That's
But
great. My other question is,
mhm.
what are the 7 life domains? You've been mentioning these a lot, but what are they? Like, what are they for?
Yes, so the 7 life domains are used in the coaching model. And basically, again, it's just that holistic view of being able to support these students. So it encompasses education. Education is typically in the middle because, of course, these on-campus based support programs are, that's a priority. Obviously, if these students are succeeding and doing well, they aren't going to get the scholarships needed to stay in college. But it also focuses on finances and employment, housing, physical and mental health, supportive relationships and community connections, cultural and personal identity, and life skills. So typically when you meet with your coach, I mean, if one area needs a little support than the others, then that's focused on during your meetings. But coaching really takes a holistic approach to making sure that all of these 7 life domains are, a-okay. That way you're succeeding, because as we all know, when one's faltering, usually that has an effect on the others.
Definitely, definitely. And yeah, I know you may know, Brina, but some of the audience, like I was able to found a campus-based support program.
Yeah.
Off of my experience, I was homeless, and I started back going to college at my community college, and yeah, they had a program called Trio, but it only met me so far and what I
Yeah.
needed in the moment. And there was other different resources. So I just was like, I felt that there was a cry out not other than myself for more support and more guidance. I had been a part of other campus-based supports, and they have been in their transition. So I don't feel like I got the full scope of that campus-based support when I was at those other colleges. But here I was, homeless
Yeah.
and in need of food most times, in need of a place to do homework because the shelter I was in didn't allow you to be on your phone or have internet access because of an incident that happened prior. So most of my days would start early in the morning, and I would stay on campus as long as I could until I had to get back to the shelter to have my bed. Um, and I needed something that housed and had a place for me. And not realizing that is what a lot of other students needed too, so end up speaking, with the presidents and many other people at that college, talking to them, and they heard me, but they really wasn't hearing me. So I called on a
Yeah.
very great friend of ours, Carrie Ward, and I was like, look, you probably can speak their language better than me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she came with the numbers and everything, and she presented it to them. And on that day, they were like, yeah, we're going to make this a mission to be able to develop this. Now, the program is now in transition, and it's because COVID kind of happened right directly after it. It hasn't been able to develop to its full potential, but it's something that I've championed to continue to work with. The program serves ages 16 to 30, which is one of the biggest age.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we talk about campus-based supports, we haven't got to a place of offering scholarships, but we utilize resources that are among the state and within the school, which like our emergency funding and CARES Act funding, and also specialty scholarships that the Mott Foundation and other programs may offer within the school to kind of resource. And the goal of that program is to eliminate barriers, which is most campus-based programs. It's the goal, on top of supporting that person holistically, is to eliminate barriers for their success. So like see the scholars, housing on the student's term can sometimes be inconsistent. So by providing a stable place, that eliminates a barrier of wondering where you're gonna have to be. And from my understanding, Senior Scholars even offers housing, through holidays, which some colleges don't do. You got to go back home. But if you're a foster kid or youth or alumni, where do you go?
Yeah.
Like, you're like, all right, I guess I'm gonna, sleep at the bus stop,
I know. Yeah.
So that's something different. But that's a little tangent, little rant, to kind of break down and kind of give you guys an example. But as we transition from the education piece, I want to say congratulations to, on the upcoming graduation.
Thank you.
You're just doing your thing. But as we transition, to this advocacy piece, you spoke a little bit about your experience with MYOY and how that promoted advocacy. And I would even say as much. MYOY teaches asset trainings directly, and the asset trainings are more so like life skill trainings that are directly asked for from the youth. So what the youth deem that I would like to learn about this. I would like to learn about changing the tire, or I feel like I don't know enough about taxes, or how do we change the thermostat? The coordinator is going to develop an asset training or find someone to do that asset training to teach those youth. The other component of that is MYOY was started and brought to my state, Michigan, by the Casey Foundation or whichever. I probably messing it up, but Jim Casey, and it has branched out to this bigger thing, which promotes leadership, education, life skills, and more. And more importantly, it promotes connections and networking. Like you build a family within this program. And a lot of people, in term, and I can speak for myself, even for some of those people that don't mind me speaking for them, a lot of people wouldn't be where they are without the MYOY program, because it gave them something when they did not have that family in return, so I'll let you go ahead and speak to that advocacy piece.
Oh, no, I mean, I agree with everything you said. No, I would 100% attribute that. I don't know if the path to getting to where I am right now would look anywhere near what it has without MYY. Would I still be here? Graduating, I mean, I would have liked to hope, but no, it was really through MYY. I mean, when I met Kelly, got involved with the HRCCI program, fostering stars, it's like a domino effect, really. And I'd say advocacy was the same. Through MYY, I think that's like, I mean, just doing a lot of advocacy for MYY itself allowed me to develop a lot of the MDHHS connections that I have, like with Annie Rossi. It got me connected with NFYI, which allowed me to do in 2019, Michigan launched its very first and so far only advocacy day. And so that allowed me to get connected with my legislator, Representative Sarah Anthony. That was the first time I met Carrie Ward was at that event, um, which of course then later got me connected to being an FSM ambassador for Carrie, eventually interning for her when I entered into the social work program at Western Michigan University. And now I just was recently hired. My first day was actually the 25th, so this week, as project assistant for a project that we're trying to launch and develop in the Kent County area on some of the campuses that are over there. But also through MIY, I got connected to YAC, which is the Youth Advisory Council for HCMH, or the Association for Children's Mental Health, which I was a part of and eventually aged out at 20, but now I sit on the board of directors for HCMH. Also through NYY, I got connected to the statewide youth advisory board. I think it was a couple years ago now. It was when everything was still virtual in the height of the pandemic. Annie Casey had like a nationwide, I don't even know how I can't even fathom coordinating it. I'm sure it was a mess, but like a nationwide convention type thing. And I was on the Michigan team for that established and decided like, hey, we need a statewide youth advisory board. And kind of that's how the statewide youth advisory board, who is, still very, I'd say, and it's baby steps, but still taking those baby steps and in the youth of its foundation, but kind of getting that started. And so being able to be a member on that to see how that's developing has been super fun. Or MIY has also gotten me connected to being a part of the continuous quality improvement kind of group. The name really isn't all that good, but which kind of focuses a lot on like data and kind of being able to support foster parents a little bit more. They kind of focus on data related to that a little bit more. So kind of like wearing multiple hats just throughout my time. I'm sure there's plenty of things I'm forgetting because I know I've advocated for CASA. I've been to a couple of those dinners and luncheons, which CASA is a court-appointed social advocate. And I know I mentioned in the last podcast that I had one throughout my time in care. CASAs really serve as another constant through youth kind of journey and transition throughout foster care. And as someone that goes to court and advocates on behalf of the student, because oftentimes court is hard, we're not always able to go because of school or whatever. And so they're able to kind of go and advocate for us based on meeting with us weekly and getting to know us and kind of being that constant. And so I got really connected to my CASA throughout my time in care as well. So I've spoken at a couple galas and stuff for that too. So yeah, advocacy for me has been all over the place, wide, expansive, whatever you want to call it. But I again would attribute most of that to MIY. Those were how I met most of the professionals in the network that I have now.
Yes, indeed. And there is a lot of things that Brina is missing out of this. Being a part of NFYI and doing a lot of advocacy, not just statewide or locally, but federally. So being a little bit humble there, but but has done a lot of great work, and continues to do a lot of great work. Me and Brina has been able to sit on a couple different things together, and it has
yes, I can't get rid of him. Yeah.
It has been a journey, always keeping me on my toes, for sure. But this, this journey hasn't ended for you. It's just transitioned in a different light, and that light has been FSM. and some of the other things that you have spoke upon, transitioning to a more, I don't know if it's fair to say bigger position of advocacy. So as we
Be more
navigate,
professional.
yeah, more professional. There we go. That's the word I'm
Yes.
looking for. As we navigate from the start and the meat of all that you do and what has helped you be who you are. As we navigate from that to FSM, what is FSM and why do you participate in it? What is it to you? Like why FSM?
Gosh, why
That's a
FSM?
loaded question.
Yes, so that's a loaded question. So again, I know I kind of explained it a little bit earlier. So FSM, Fostering Success Michigan, it focuses on college access and success for youth with experience in foster care in Michigan. And there's like a few other states that have something similar. There's in Florida, there's kind of like a sibling program that is pretty grassroots and has the foundation that FSM has here in Michigan and is able to support campuses and students in the same way that we do. And then there's I think there's 17 in total, so like 15 other states that have at least an identified champion. Although they don't have an as established kind of organization as Michigan and Florida does. But here in Michigan, again, there's 30 campuses that we partner with and support to kind of keep the campus-based support programs moving, so they can still support those students. And then we're constantly looking for and advocating for, like, trying to figure out champions on other campuses that don't have these programs, trying to identify champions to create more of these programs, because I mean, a lot of the big campuses, MSU, Western, CMU, Ferris, U of M, like they have these established programs, but there's plenty of campuses across Michigan, especially like community colleges, because we focus on community colleges and trade schools too. So like, I went to LCC and everything, but and Mott's establishing and foundationing that at Mott. But so just trying to identify champions is a big part of what we do, and trying to establish and create more of these programs to ultimately continue to supporting the students, because everything should be done with the students in mind. A lot of what we do too is partnering with other child welfare programs. So, there's a lot of partner with various MYY, statewide youth advisory board, being involved with those, kind of staying on top of the happenings of child welfare. There's also a legislation piece to FSM, actually just yesterday. No, not yesterday. Tuesday. My week is all over the place, right? That's how life's been since COVID. But probably even before. But Tuesday was MCAN, so the Michigan College Access Network Advocacy Day at the Capitol. So here in Lansing, where they set aside the words are escaping me. They set aside, or were able to set up meetings for us with legislators, kind of tapered to our areas. So I know there was a couple more on the west side of the state, but that we were able to meet with and advocate for. So like right now, kind of one of the main focuses of FSM, or something that we're really focusing on right now and kind of really wanting to try to get jump started, is making or having a tuition waiver in Michigan. So again, like Florida and many other states actually too, more than I initially would have expected, have some sort of tuition and fee waiver. And again, that looks different for different states. Some states are like, hey, if a youth with experience in foster care who's checked question 53 on the FAFSA, applies and gets accepted, then you're obligated to give them a free seat. Other states are doing it differently, where it's in the form of a scholarship or the expansion of TIP, the tuition incentive program, which is a little bit more kind of what we're advocating for. A lot of the legislators that me and Carrie met with on Tuesday were, Republican and conservative. And so money, we're always spending too much money. And so spitballing the idea of expanding a scholarship like the tuition incentive program to encompass former foster youth, or even expansion of the fostering future scholarship, kind of that piques their interest a little bit more than like, hey, free college, which
And
free
from what
college.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but
You're
from
good.
what I understand, the Foster Future Scholarship is
Hmm.
uh it's like it's not funded by the state. It's it's money raised
Yeah,
from that,
it's
and I know that's been a big piece of advocacy is trying to get it to where it's funded by the state, and
yeah.
what have you.
Yes. Well, they only give you so much when you try. But so trying to spitball expanding these scholarships that are already in place and to kind of have a solid
Mhm.
foundation to operate or have like a similar function as a tuition fee waiver would, versus just saying like, hey, give these students free college, and like colleges just have to bite the cost of having a
Mhm.
free seat or something. So that's kind of been a big focus of what we're doing right now.
Mhm.
Like I said, I recently was hired as the project assistant. So another thing that we're trying to launch is what we're calling the Change Makers program, or project, and that is in Kent County. So that's at Grand Valley State University, Grand Rapids Community College, um, and Aquinas College. So those are kind of the three campuses we're focusing on right now. But they have launched this program, I'm not sure if it has the same name, but a very similar program in Colorado that is like super, it's just raised the rate of graduation exponentially. It's just been such a successful program that we're like, wow, we need one of those here in Michigan, especially because in Michigan, youth want to be involved. There are so many youth that are like, yes, I want to be a mentor. Yes, I want to advocate. Like, and so we're trying to launch that this year, planning on training. We have a few students identified and on board. So training them. And although like a big focus of that is former foster youth, we're also including like homeless or in housing, like youth who have experienced housing instability. And then we also have a couple youth who are refugees. So we're looking into kind of expanding on that a little bit more as a project. And we've also talked about maybe podcasts in the future. But we'll see what happens with that. We have high aspirations. So mostly over the summer, we're just planning on kind of training that and then launching that on those campuses this fall. So I'm super, super excited to be a part of that. Um, and just kind of be identified as like a lead change maker myself even. So excited to do that. Talked about the legislation piece. So just like again, partnering with the community. I know Carrie's mentioned wanting to be a little bit more involved with like local happenings and that kind of thing. So we'll see what the future holds. I know FSM just last year went under the transition of being housed, because FSM started actually on Western's campus originally and was launched and was housed over by where the CETA program is on campus, and eventually made the transition to being housed under the new foster care, which the new foster care is awesome. They just focus a little bit more on things like permanency, versus, focusing on education. And that's kind of, that's not abnormal. A lot of child welfare programs focus on one thing or another versus holistic approaches, which is why it's so important that our campuses, campus-based support programs, are focusing on the 7 life domains and providing holistic support. Because really, I mean, you need it all. If one leg of the horse is faltering, it's not going to walk right. But we made the transition last year, because it hasn't even been quite a full year yet, from being housed under the new foster care to being housed under Educate Tomorrow, which is actually a Florida-based nonprofit organization that houses the sibling program that I mentioned at Florida earlier, which is called Positive Pathways, and just like a lot of other good resources and other things that they're doing. And that's based in Miami and everything. So, we've got our hands in a lot of buckets.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you guys got your hands full. And I know Carrie's gonna listen to this. I'm still waiting to have you on, Carrie. So we got to get that together, and what have you. And I also and am in works to possibly have the new foster care director. The goal of this is to be able to have all aspects
Sure.
of people. To showcase what each and every crevice of the child welfare arena looks like. in each and every state. I'm not just here for Michigan. I'm here to talk to anybody and everybody that is in this arena throughout the whole entire country and beyond.
Yes, and
So,
beyond. Yes. Well,
because
shameless plug. I would encourage anybody listening, even if they don't have any sort of connection and experience in foster care or child welfare, but especially if they do. If it's a youth exploring college, or a professional wanting to get more connected or explore resources, to check out the Fostering Success Michigan website. There are toolkits on there. And then there's also not only a Michigan map of like connections and campuses and supports and resources, but there is also a nationwide one on there. So that kind of, the entire US. So I check that out. Both of them probably need to be updated, which is such a monumental task, but it's a good starting place. And then, of course, reach out, that we have the contact information on there. It wouldn't be me directly, but I'm sure there's ways to get connected to me, if that's something. But just reach out, ask questions. Again, we're always looking to build connection and network and professionals, and we welcome that. So never hesitate to reach out. But I would, shameless plug, check out the website for sure.
And as we end out, because I want to round it back to you and your personal story and your personal experience. Why did you intern at FSM? Like, why did you decide to take on this new position? Like, what struck in you that this is where you needed to be?
Mm-hmm. Well, if it hasn't been made clear, advocacy is something that is really important to me. I know we talked about last time, changing the narrative, and advocating for me has really given me the opportunity to change the narrative that it feels like, society and others have written for me. Being able to change from being a victim to a survivor, and tailoring my story like that, changing my story of one that, in despite of all the barriers that come with having experienced foster care, being a first generation college student, coming from a family that is, middle to low income, to one of success, of like being able to go to college, and not just going to college, but like succeeding well. I'm not the first person that enjoys talking about myself, but having a 4.0 college at, or 4.0 GPA at both colleges, and really succeeding with honors, being a part of like 3 different honor societies, and continuing advocating along the way. And so when Carrie was like, yes, I think we're on the list of places where you can intern, I would love to have you. I actually didn't know Carrie as well as I do now then, because I had just that summer, like, had joined on as an FSM ambassador, and the only prior experience I had with her was like meeting her at the NFI Youth Shadow Day thing. So, I was kind of like, we'll see how it goes. But I love the work that FSM is doing. Again, advocating is something that I think is so important. Having that conversation with youth, like, hey, college is an option for you, because so often they think it's not, whether they're being told by other people, whether it's financial burden, whether it's housing, whether it's, oh, I have to take care of my siblings. Because I know for me, I could not have fathomed how I would put myself through college. Like, I have no financial support from family. And that's just the reality. We survive paycheck to paycheck. And so without the granted patchwork, which makes it so confusing, and a tuition waiver for any legislators listening would be super, super helpful. But all the patchwork and everything, trying to figure everything out. But like, I am going to be graduating this summer with like no debt. That's 2 degrees, and thank you. And that wouldn't have been, possible, without the network I've created, and without the supports that are there and the resources that are there. And that's prioritized at FSM. And a lot of, the things I'm passionate about, changing a lot of the things that we're told as youth, is that 3 to 11%, that graduation rate of 3 to 11%. And that is like shoved down our throats, and that is a barrier, and we're told that we can't do it, right? And so changing the narrative of not one, And that's honestly probably an outdated statistic because there are plenty of campuses and colleges and other states that have a way higher graduation rate. But changing that narrative of one of like, hey, you're like, you could very well be a part of this 3 to 11%, and like graduating and going to college is going to be super hard for you, versus one of like, hey, here are all your peers who are succeeding and you can be like, you can succeed, you can do college. And so that's kind of what they are arguing for and supporting. And that's something that I also, like, in my soul, want others to know. And the title of these episodes are, having a big dream. If people laugh at your dream, good, dream big, because so often we're told of all the things that we can't do and not told of all the things that we can't do. And so FSM, especially, not to be like, since I've been interning there, but changing that narrative to one of, this is what you can do. These are your strengths, having that strength-based perspective of like, you can succeed, you can do it. There are all these supports and resources and people who want you to succeed and are going to be there to help you succeed. And so that's kind of what made me like, yes, I want to intern here. And I have been having so much fun interning here. It's just been like, even being hired on as project assistant is a job. I couldn't tell, because it's everything I love. Just being able to, it's kind of a transition for me, even about like being able to advocate my story, but in a professional realm, speaking more with legislators and other like professionals that work in child welfare, has just been such a dream of mine. I think I couldn't have asked for more. I know the listeners might not know, but I know, that in the past, you've mentioned that, of course, former foster youth always go into something politics or social work related, but I honestly think this is exactly where I want to be. Just being able to help those who are going to come after me. I mean, granted, does the foster care system need to be dismantled and rebuilt from the ground up? 100%, because it has, all of the disparities that we see in every other system in America. But being able to be in this work and insinuating some sort of change, even if it just seems insignificant or so small, every little thing counts. And I really do want to make the system better for those who are going to come after me, because it's inevitable. While I'd like to see the system completely rechanged and rebuilt, is it realistic? But this is exactly what I want to be doing, and this is where I want to be. The CASA. Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, CASA. Okay, Michael, I'm going to talk first, okay? But
I was just going to keep us on track because of time.
Yes. I'll be quick.
So I'll let you go ahead.
CASA had a slogan that has really just stuck with me throughout the rest of my time in care and just advocacy and everything else. That is the power of one, which is really like, as long as you can be the one for one person, in their case, one child, then you're doing enough. And so that's something I've really held on to through my time. And so, I mentioned changes, advocating, even if it's something insignificant, but as long as it's impacting one person, like this podcast, if one person can gain something from that, then that's enough. Okay, you may speak.
Okay. All right. But thank you. You kind of put in a little bit of a tidbit in there, so I appreciate that. I didn't have to ask that question. But what I will say is, as a person who has been in this realm for so long, and I've seen it evolve. I've seen programs like FSM evolve. I've seen events. I don't know if it's really considered a program, but the teen conference evolve.
Yeah.
NYOY evolve, and what have you. I've seen different intricate parts of trying to focus on the youth and what have you. So I definitely believe that you have a calling, you have a purpose in your life towards this advocacy and towards education and continuing to support and changing that narrative, as you said. And I just would love to continue to connect and follow you through that, and have you on again. This journey has not ended for yourself. You spoke about things that are next for yourself, graduate school and continuing as project director, assistant. I don't know. I don't want to mess up the title. I want to get it right because you've earned it. But overseeing the project and what have you. And that's very powerful, you know, and I commend you. And as I've interviewed a lot of alumni on here, I commend them for the work that they are doing because you've worked hard for it.
Mhm.
You deserve to brag on yourself, you know, because there has been barriers, there has been dark hours, and there has been rainy days. And to be at a
You
place
aren't
of
lying.
graduating, you know, amongst all the things that has been trying, and probably that voice in your head saying that you could not do it, you know, on top of the voices that did say it in the world,
Yeah.
you
Yes.
know. So I say all this as a bit of encouragement for you guys, you know, that maybe still having that voice very loud in your ears, and you're trying to push through school. And it may not just be college, it may be vocational school, it may be a trade school, whatever it is, trying to push through whatever you are trying to do to get to that next level in your life. You know, take this podcast, you know, as an encouragement, you know, to continue to persevere, you know, continue to have those conversations. You know, some of you guys that listened to the last episode got to hear Brina speak about, you know, having those hard conversations, which we all know it's really hard to have conversations with family and to sit in front of them and bear your truth and your honesty, even though you know that they may not have the best reaction to it, and what have you. And some of us sitting at home might still need to have that conversation, you know?
Yes. They
So
don't get
take
any easier.
that, man. So take this episode, this two-part episode, you know, and have those conversations. Let it invoke conversations. Listen to it with your family. Listen to it with your circle, with your friend, and ask these questions, these hard questions to yourself. You know, where am I at? What do I want to do? Where am I trying to go? What is my purpose? You know, and if I'm being true to my own mental health and self-care.
Mm-hmm.
So with that being said, you know, COVID is out there. It is doing its thing. You know, please take care of yourself. You know, we are this one big village, and by you taking care of yourself, you're taking care of the whole village. So be mindful of the precautions and things and steps that you need to do to just stay healthy, you know, and just know that, you know, I love you and I care about you, you know. So, you know,
Mm-hmm.
don't want you to be too risky. Um, the other part of that is, you know, I hope that you guys go well. And after listening to this, have a great night, a great evening, a great morning, great whatever you're listening to this. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you, Brina, for being on here. It has been an honor to hear your story and your truth. I truly appreciate it. You know.
Hey, I appreciate it. I appreciate you having this platform, and catch me on season 2 as the next FSM director, maybe.
Yeah.
Putting that out there into the universe.
I love it. I love it. This has been Resilient Voices and Beyond. Thank you.